Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Rob, and if you have stumbled upon Heresy Hammer for the first time, welcome. We are a channel dedicated exclusively to the world of Horus Heresy and the Age of Darkness. If you are a long-time veteran of the channel, then welcome back. We are going to be having a look at 3.0 Force Organization chart explained today. So on the community WhatsApp group, there are still lots of questions about how this Force Organization chart works, and I think rightly so, because it's a little bit more complex than the previous Force Organization chart. And if you are brand new to the Horus Heresy, I think in your case, it's going to be a little bit confusing about exactly what can be taken. And it's even more confusing because we only have one piece of the puzzle so far. Without the levers, without any leaks from the levers, and without those in the hand, it's actually very, very difficult to explain exactly what is going to go on. But in today's video, I'm going to try and explain to you the Force Organization chart, how the basic Force Organization chart works, and how the premise of the Force Organization chart works. But please bear in mind, with the levers dropping, as I'm assuming in the next 5 weeks or so, with those dropping, that may change things, and that may change the look of the Force Organization chart for each army. So Solar Auxilia, Custodes, Demons, and it might change the look and feel of each legion as well. So your Blood Angels, for example, might have more assault or more troop options than, say, tanks, or Imperial Fist might have more tanks than say other options. Yeah, etc., etc., etc. Right. So things are changing. It's an ever-moving landscape, but this video today is designed to kind of walk you through the Force Organization chart, and that's all I'm going to be talking about today. So just before we get started, there's just a couple of things, and something that I just want to add into this as well. The Warcom article said and stated, and I think this is where a little bit of confusion lays, there are no compulsory slots, and basically you can take whatever you want. Now, that is true to some extent, but I think it's a little bit misleading, that, which is that if you want to take juicy, cool stuff like loads of Predators and loads of Sicarans, you are actually going to be forced to take some command options or some high command options, because those are the things that unlock those auxiliary detachments, which those tanks kind of fall in, with those dreadnoughts fall in, etc., right? So yes, you can take, there's more flexibility in list design perhaps than there was previously, but you're still forced to take certain things to unlock other things. Now, what we don't know at this moment in time is whether I could put like a command upgrade on a Predator, and then that Predator unlocks even more Predators. Without the Liber books, which is like the codexes, I guess, for each of the 18 legions, without those books in hand, it's very difficult at this moment in time to say, yeah, sure, you could absolutely take like an entire army of tanks if you wanted to. From what we know and understand, and from judging from our experience from the previous edition, at this moment in time, that's not necessarily possible, but that could change. And if it does change, we'll do an updated video about Force Organization charts. The other thing to say is that, each legion, as I said before, might have something different, might have different detachments, and as a result, like that will change a lot of things as well. Just to remind you guys, though, there are no dedicated transports. They are taken up with their slots of their own now, and there's no talons and there's no squadrons as well. That's a massive change for 13 years of the Horus Heresy. Talons and squadrons were always a thing previously. Those have now changed. To me personally, I think removing talons from dreadnoughts, and if you're new to the Horus Heresy, talons just meant that basically you could buy dreadnoughts in either pairs, or you could buy them in threes for Contemptors and Leviathan. Doredios, I think, were bought in pairs, or could be bought in pairs, so they filled one slot, but they just had to start on the board near each other. What I think they've done to balance that out, so you can't kind of spam as many dreadnoughts as you want to in a list now, they've put each dreadnought in its own slot, in its own detachment. So it's actually, you're having to pay a command tax in order to unlock a dreadnought. Not necessarily, because there's something called logistical benefits, but we'll get into that in a little bit. Let's have a look at the detachments in and of themselves, though. So this is what you're going to start with, right? This is the beginning. This is where it all starts from, and everything. This is the center, and then everything's going to come out like a spider's web from here. So you start with the Crusade primary detachment. This is kind of the foundations of your army list building. So for every command choice you make, be it high or regular, we'll just call it regular command and then high command, you gain the ability to take an auxiliary detachment. So that's really important, right? So this that is like not very sexy at the moment. Your Crusade primary detachment, it doesn't look very sexy. There's no tanks going on. There's no dreadnoughts going on. There's no flyers going on with this at all. It's troops and then commanders. All right, that's the basically the long and short. And you get some transports as well, and those will typically be rhinos. Now, each of those command choices, though, that you've got, this includes high command and command. Each of those command choices, if you choose to take a commander in one of those, it can unlock an auxiliary detachment. Now, I'll get to the auxiliary detachments in a bit, but the auxiliary detachments basically have something cool in them, right? So one auxiliary detachment might be for fast attack choices. One auxiliary detachment might unlock one dreadnought. One auxiliary detachment might unlock four tanks. So for every commander that you take, you can then take an auxiliary detachment, and each of those auxiliary detachments are different. All right. Now, what I think is important to understand here is that the high command can also unlock one auxiliary detachment itself. But because he's the high command, because he is like one of the top tier in the management structure of the legions, he's up there, board of directors or whatever. They are top tier. Think about your Abaddons, think about your first company captains, think about your Sevitars. These are the top tier guys. These guys lead the legion. Because they are so important, they don't just have access to auxiliary detachments, but they also have access to apex detachments as well. Now, the apex detachments are super sexy, right? They're your command squads, they're other commanders. So if you're not sick of 4 commanders in your primary detachment, then you can unlock even more commanders, which might unlock further auxiliary detachments, right? But they can also take Vanguard, so which is kind of the elite, so the best of the Legion, essentially. So those guys, those high command, have access to things that normal commanders don't have, but they also have access to everything that a commander has as well. So that's important, but we'll go through a few worked examples as we go on. So these are the auxiliary detachments. These are the bread and butter of your army list building. Now, we'll get to the apex detachments in a second, but the auxiliary detachments are the important bits, because as you can see, they're all the tanks, the Spartans, the tactical supports, the Terminators, etc., right? So the officer car, sorry, so each of the commands can unlock one of these. So for one commander, you could have the armored fist detachment. For one command choice, you could have the tactical support detachment. For one command, you could have the armored support. So that might mean that I take in my list one siege breaker, right? So let's just imagine, just in that primary detachment, I take one siege breaker and one siege breaker only. Siege breakers, if you're not sure or not familiar with them, they were all about assaulting kind of cities, assaulting walls and things like that. These guys were good at going against and besieging and doing the logistics behind besieging kind of like planets and cities, etc., right? So let's just imagine in that previous primary attachment, the only thing I take is a siege breaker, and he fills this slot here, this first slot here. Now, because I've taken one siege breaker, that means that I can unlock any one of these auxiliary detachments. So that siege breaker can unlock armored support, or it could unlock first strike, or it can unlock shock assault, or it can unlock tactical support. All right. Now, that's what we're assuming at this moment in time. Any console can unlock one type of detachment. What we don't know is if a vigilator, for example, which is really, he's like a super duper sniper. What we don't know is if he gets something like unlocking combat pioneers for free, and then plus an extra detachment. So there are lots of questions around this so far. But in essence, that's how it works. Now, the apex detachments, those can only be unlocked by your high command, your praetors. Now, they could unlock combat retinues, which by the looks of things looks like your command squads. They can unlock the officer cadre, which is even more command. So if you take it even more commanders, that means you can unlock even more auxiliary detachments. Okay, so you might want an army full of dreads, but that means that, if you want 6 or 7 dreads in your list, you're going to have to take your primary detachment full of your commanders, along with some more commanders in order to do that. So for every dreadnought you're buying, you're going to have to take an extra command tax. But the last Apex detachment is also the Vanguard, Army Vanguard as well. Now, these are the best of the Legion, not necessarily first company like Terminators, but these might be, say, your Justarian or whatever. These might be your Dawnbreakers or Bringers or whatever they're called. These might be your Reavers. These are the kind of like the weapon skill 5, the hardy fighters, the multi-wound. These are the top tier kind of like Legion specific units in your army. But there are these things, and you may have noticed as we were going through these spiked circles all throughout the force organization chart. Now, you will have noticed that not every circle is spiked. Now, that's really important. So, with our primary detachment here, only 2 of the circles are spiked. 1 command is spiked, and then 1 troops is spiked. Okay. These are called prime slots. Now, these slots allow you to buff up whatever unit is in them. Okay, so with a command choice, if you put him in a prime slot, you'll be able to give him a prime benefit. Now, that might be buffs to his stats, so it could be +1 weapon skill, +1 ballistic skill, +1 yada yada yada, or it might be something like logistical benefit. Okay, which allows you once per detachment to take a single unit from any slot without needing to be from an associated detachment. So, for example, if I take logistical benefit on our primary detachment here, and I take the logistical benefit for this troops detachment, I could just put into there a dreadnought, right? So because you've taken something from a prime slot and you've given it logistical benefit, you can just take 1 dreadnought in there without needing to take a corresponding kind of like command to be able to unlock that, for example. Okay, so that's really important. I think that's where a lot people are probably going to use a fair amount of prime slots to unlock logistical benefits if they don't want to pay a commander tax. So here we've got a worked example. So this is going to be a little bit easier to explain here. Okay. So for my high command, I have taken a Praetor. All right. Nice and simple, nice and straightforward. He's a Praetor with an axe. Easy peasy, right? He'll probably have a 4-up Iron Halo, a 2-up save. He'll have more wounds. He'll be weapon skill 6, those kinds of things. He's a bit of a beast in combat, and it's pretty survivable. Then for my command choices, I've taken a chaplain, and then I've taken a siege breaker, and then I've taken a centurion as well. Okay, so those are my command choices. So I fill those command choices out. Now that's going to be important for a little bit later. All right. For my troops, I've taken 2 tactical squads. And then for my transports, I've taken 2 rhinos to go around with them. Okay. Now, rhinos, the capacity of rhinos is only 12. Those squads look like they're kind of like 15 or 20 man squads. Let's just assume they're 10 man squads for the purposes of this discussion. But the troops option that I've chosen, the one with the red circle around, that's going to be my prime slot, that one. Now, my prime advantage that I've taken, my benefit, I've taken logistical benefit. Now, that means that I can add in anything from any of the slot that I want to, and I can pop it into that primary detachment there. And what I've decided to do is take logistical benefit on that troop slots, and then I've decided just to take a dreadnought. Okay, so that's a pretty good start for an army. That's a pretty good beginning. Now we've obviously got one more prime slot that we've used for one of our command choices. We'll come to that a little bit later. But as I say, logistical benefit is going to be important because it will unlock one slot that is beyond the detachment you're working in. So you go, well, I want to take some speeders. I don't want to take a dreadnought. Okay, well, your troop slot takes the logistical benefit, and then you can just throw some speeders in there. All right. You might decide, okay, well, I don't want a dreadnought. I don't want a Leviathan dreadnought in my army or in my primary detachment. I'm going to take logistical benefit. And then I am going to unlock one singular Sikaran tank. Okay, because you can do that with a logistical benefit. But the problem with taking logistical benefit is that it means that you don't get the other cool stuff with associated with those prime slots. So you can't make it then, you know, your the sergeant in that squad, say a master sergeant, which means it gets the champion subtype, can fight in challenges, gets a buff to, you know, various buffs across its stat line and things like that, right? So you're sacrificing something in order to gain something else, and that's a choice at the army and list building stage that you will have to decide upon. You know, that's going to be, I think, one of the more exciting parts of army and list building now, that there are lots of choices, and I think each army is going to be very, very different as a result of that. Okay, so that's our primary detachment that we've got there. Let's have a look at how we're going to open this up. So the command slot now opens up extra detachments. All right, so we had our high command as we've got here, and the high command, as I said to you before, can take the apex or auxiliary detachment. It can take one of them and one of them only, okay, from what we've seen so far, and it can be either apex or auxiliary. And then my high command here, sorry, my normal commanders, my chaplain, my siege breaker, and my normal centurion can take auxiliary detachments and auxiliary detachments only. Now, usually, from what we've seen, one command can unlock one auxiliary detachment. But what we do know is that the basic centurion, this guy in the center, from the new box, from the new Saturnine box, he has officer of the line 2, so he can actually take 2 auxiliary detachments. So with 3 command choices, I've now unlocked actually 4 auxiliary detachments. Okay, really important. And with my high command, I now have access to potentially 5 auxiliary detachments. So you can see here, just by taking commanders in my force, I've opened up a lot of slots. All right, you're going to run out of points pretty soon. All right, with this. Okay. So as I said, Praetor unlocks the Apex or Auxiliary. The Chaplain and the Siegebreaker unlocks an Auxiliary detachment each. The Centurion unlocks 2 Auxiliary because of his rule, so he's Officer of the Line 2. And then the Army therefore selects 4 Auxiliary detachments and 1 Apex detachment, or 5 Auxiliary detachments. Okay, so basically, just by taking commanders in my army, leaders in my army, I've basically opened up the whole of the whole of the kind of all the units in the Horus Heresy that you could possibly imagine. All right. Now, we aren't going to talk too much today about the Allied detachment and the Warlord detachment and Lords of War. We will come to that at another point. This is just the basics of force organization. All right. So the army, with our worked example, the army selects 4 auxiliary detachments and 1 apex. So the apex comes from the Praetor, and then the 4 auxiliaries comes from my normal commanders. All right. You can see with the see here. So we've got with our example here, in the center, our primary detachment, we've got the logistical advantage here, which is my dreadnought that I showed you before. And then let's go to our high command. He's the most important, so let's start there. Okay, so let's just assume that just there in our army vanguard, they are top tier. Okay, and we don't know that for certain, but we're just assuming for this example that they are. So with my army vanguard, I've taken 2 squads of Justaerian Terminators. All right. Now, with those 2 squads of Justaerian Terminators, I get 1 prime slot in there. Now, that prime slot I could use to make that Justaerian Sergeant a Master Sergeant, make him an absolute fucking dick kicker in close combat, right? Absolutely make him a badass, you know, like comparable to like a champion or something. But instead, I've gone for the less sexy option of going for a logistical benefit or a logistical advantage. And what I've done is therefore opened up a slot through that army vanguard, and I've decided to take a tank. I've decided to take a Spartan tank because I've taken the logistical advantage there. Now, that I could put potentially either one of my Justaerian in that tank, okay, from the rules that we kind of know and understand, but it's unlikely that I can put both of them in that tank. So one might be foot slogging, and one of them will be going in that tank, right? I don't think that this moment in time there's any rule that says that that prime slot has to go along with that tank. There's no rule that we've seen that suggests that is the case. Okay. So that's the Apex and the Army Vanguard there for you. So that's how you get your elite killers in your force. Now, let's move to the Chaplain. So the chaplain, he's in a prime slot. We might not use that prime slot, or we might give him something that's useful a little bit later, but he's in the prime slot. He's going to unlock my shock assault detachment. All right. And this is an auxiliary detachment here. So he's going to unlock shock assault, and I've taken 2 lots of terminators. And at this moment in time, they are going to be foot slogging across the board because I haven't unlocked any other tanks for them. All right. Now there are no prime benefits in the shock assault detachment, so it's not like I can unlock just from that detachment another Spartan or a Land Raider or something like that. With my siege breaker, I've decided to go for tactical support, and I've taken 2 grav rapiers within there. Okay, nice and simple, straightforward tactical support. I don't have to fill up that detachment. I could just use 1 model in there if I really, really wanted to, or I could use all 4 in there. Okay, but I've taken 2 grav rapiers in there, and then this is the really important bit to understand. This centurion. So the centurion has officer of the line 2, so he actually gets to unlock 2 auxiliary detachments here. Now for him, I've gone for armored support, so I've gone for 2 predators and then 1 Kratos as well. And then I've also gone for first strike, and I've gone for 2 javelins as well. Now, those centurions, that centurion is going to be on foot. That centurion is not going to be able to be attached to a tank. He's or one of the tanks in armor support, and he's not going to be able to be attached to a javelin. That's not how this works. The centurion just simply unlocks the detachments. There's nothing that says that that centurion has to go with any one of those models within that detachment. Okay, so that's really important to understand here. It's not like that centurion is linked to those things. That centurion there could go and join a squad of Justarin in my army vanguard if I really wanted to. They are not linked together on the table. They're simply linked together at the force organization and list building stage. Right? I suspect that probably what we're going to find in the first 6 months is that people are using quite a lot of centurions, or have at least 1 centurion in their army to unlock 2 slots. I think the utility is going to be such that it's important at the list building stage that you're going to get 2 auxiliary slots out of that 1 centurion. That's just my hunch at this moment in time. I've got no data to support that. That's just my feelings in my waters at this moment in time. So that is how list building works. That's how it's going to work from everything that we've seen at this moment in time. And I'm hoping that kind of worked example is useful for you guys. The Warhammer community site did do a worked example using a Raven Guard, army that looked absolutely awesome. And yeah, it looked really, really cool. And it's a good worked example. But hopefully talking through this for you guys has explained things a little bit easier. Hopefully it's not as clear as mud, me working through that for you, but hopefully it's been useful. As we always say, if you guys like this show, you found it useful, and want to support us, then please head over to our Patreon. You can join us for, at the moment, as little as £3 a month, but we're going to have a small pricing, just a teeny tiny price increase from the start of next month. So go and support us over there. We've got a campaign running at the moment, an absolutely awesome campaign. Like, I played a mission last week against my friend Mike from it, to be able to kind of do like some analysis at the end of the month for the Patreon as well. But we offer Tactica videos, and there's going to be a hell of a lot to talk about in terms of Tactica coming up. I did a video all about psychic powers and how they are going to work for the new edition on the Patreon. That's available now, so make sure you go get yourself signed up. And it's just as we always say, if you want to support us, if you like what we do, just go sign up, and that'll be absolutely awesome. Anyway, guys, thank you ever so much for watching, and we shall see you on the next one.